fans, welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and Giallo films. And this is a Giallo film that I just picked up. This is one of the last ones I picked up. Despite my huge backlog of Giallo, still tackling the wish list. Still have a lot I haven't got to yet. But this is one I've heard a lot of good things about and didn't really know anything about it. And I actually found it on a Blu-ray and a DVD combo pack from BCI Entertainment, and that's 1974's Puzzle. Not to be confused with Lamberto Bava's Body Puzzle, which is on my wish list, and I'll be getting that eventually. This was directed by Duccio Tessari, which I have not reviewed any of his films yet. I'm not sure what else he's done as far as Giallo goes. I think he's mostly known for spaghetti westerns and what they call sword and sandal films. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm seeing. He directed Bloodstained Butterfly, which I'll be getting to as well. That's another one I gotta pick up. Puzzle. And I'm pretty sure that's it. Or whatever this is, Death. Death Occurred Last Night. That's more of a crime film. Also did a lot of those, if I pronounce this correctly, Polizieschi films, which are more cop noir films. But this stars Senta Berger, Luke Miranda, Umberto Orsini, Bruno Corazzari, and Anita Strindberg. And I have seen, of course, Anita Strindberg has been in a slew of Giallo films, ones that I reviewed, including Lizard and Woman's Skin. I think she was in Case of the Scorpion's Tail. Yep. Who Saw Her Die? Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Had the Key. And Luca Miranda was also in Torso. He's known for a lot of action films as well, and those Italian police films. There is a good action scene in here, like a good fight scene with him. But, so, it's a Giallo, but it was actually co-written by the director Tessari, Ernesto Gastaldi, probably my favorite Giallo writer, and Bruno Di Geronimo, awesome name. And the music is by Gianni Ferrio, which the music I really got to give credit to as well. So, this, it's a Giallo, but I would compare this, it's a Giallo like Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion. It's not a murder mystery that's going on concurrently. It actually has to do more with a drug deal, finding the drugs, and amnesia. The main plot and how this film comes together and plays out is more like, if I had to compare it, Memento, Born Identity, stuff like that. Luca Miranda is this guy who 8 months back got in this horrific car accident, wiped his memory clean, and he didn't even know his name. He didn't know he was married. He was in New York, and he goes back to Portofino, Italy, to meet back up with his wife, played by Senta Berger, or Berger. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I have a friend from the Netherlands with that same last name, and I always mispronounce it. And yet there's these people coming after him saying, you know, we need the stuff, or we're going to kill you, we're going to kill your wife. But he has no memory, but he also doesn't really want anything to do with it. He wants to continue a straight life. But he's compelled to try to remember. And there's a series of events, usually with something violent or, something potentially violent that's going to happen. That's what jogs his memory. And we keep getting a flashback to this one certain point in his life, right before the accident, where this drug deal was being planned out. That's what he has to remember. So, like, the first time his wife's dog was killed, he sees the dead dog, it jogs the initial memory. Then as the film continues, more and more stuff he sees triggers more of that scene, and we see more of it play out. But it has some great twists and turns. There was some stuff at the end that left me kind of confused. It didn't really go into detail with some aspects of the plot. The twist reveal, like sort of not really the string puller, but the one that sort of he's supposed to be answering to. I didn't really see it being the person that it was, but I had my suspicions about that guy. There were a couple scenes that looked kind of fishy, and I thought he was up to something, but I thought it was for, his own reasons. There are some crazy things that, I would expect. Like, if you saw my last review, it was a rant on Death Carries the Cane. And I pointed out a lot of just the absurd plot points and how things carry out. There are a couple things in this that is kind of to that level. For example, in the beginning of the film, the wife, Sarah, tells her gardener to put the chainsaw that he's using back in the cabinet. Now, we probably think in the shed or the garage. She meant the kitchen. Yes, she keeps her chainsaw in the kitchen. Of course, that foreshadows something's going to happen later, but I think that, especially with what's going on at that point in the film later on, there's other ways to get the chainsaw in there. And with how well written this film is and just how well put together it is, I kind of would have expected something more like that. Not just, I keep a chainsaw in the kitchen. But some of the other supporting casts, there's sort of the middleman, I guess, or like his partner in crime, who I don't think he has a name. He calls himself George. Played by Bruno Corsari. Which this guy I could relate to. Because every few seconds he's going like this with the tissue. He's got chronic allergies. I understand what that's like. Still got dog hair everywhere, so that's why I'm like this. He's not convinced that Ted, is the main character's name, has lost his memory, and he's just holding out. He gives him and his wife a week to live and to come up with the stuff, because that's how long his people gave him. Because Ted owes George, George owes them. So he's threatening to kill Ted, even though he's pretty much his lifeline. There's also this fucking kid played by, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Giulio Cruciani. Now, I know he's written as a bratty kid, a bratty 10-year-old kid. He's not related to any of the characters. He's just a neighbor, but he's always around. He has this close Tommy Doyle, Laurie Strode kind of relationship. She doesn't babysit him. They just hang out a lot. I know he's supposed to be bratty and have kind of an attitude. I had to have the subtitles on every time this kid was on screen, which is a lot. Because I don't know if it's just his dubbing actor or what. Most of his lines he's yelling, and it's hard to understand him. But yeah, this kid got to be a pain in the ass. He's not quite Bob level. House by the Cemetery. Again, I think he's written to be kind of a bratty kid. Bob was just supposed to be a normal kid and came off annoying as sin. But nor is he the kid from Absurd. That's also an awful kid. But this kid was kind of nerve-grating as well. And so basically, at first, Ted tries keeping this whole secret life with this drug deal and these people he's involved with secret. But then, of course, when he sees the dead dog, which is the first kill of the movie, an hour in, he has his first flashback, which is, him slitting a guy's throat or holding a guy while his throat's being slit. Beautifully shot. It's one of those great Italian, just what we need to see is visible. The rest is all this inky black shadow. Kind of like an Italian David Lynch. And Sarah can tell he's been startled or rattled by something. So that's when he has to tell her what's going on. Then eventually she's pulled into this world because then George starts threatening her. In fact, there's one reference. And this movie's full of really well done suspenseful scenes with the music and the editing. There's a scene where George is lighting matches and throwing them in Sarah's lap. And just the way it keeps panning to her lap as she's brushing them off of her, to his hands, to his face, with the music that's going on. It's a lot of flute and violin. He says he saw it in a movie once, which is actually a reference to a Hitchcock film called Charade, which I haven't seen, but I'm familiar with it. I was trying to think of how much to talk about before I get to spoilers, and then there's this other guy who picks Sarah up from work, hangs out with her. You get the idea he's in love with her, and he's also friends, so by extension also friends with Luca because he's always around. But he's a guy I was kind of suspecting at first. I thought he was in it for his own reasons. But, there's a scene with him that was kind of fishy. I'm just going to get into spoilers, but I do recommend this. Especially if you like, if you like Giallo films, definitely check it out. Because it's definitely different, original, very well written. And the music, there's a lot of, when it's not violent and flute, there's a lot of really dramatic, when she first sees the dead dog, she turns around and runs down the hall, and it's in slow motion, and it's just like this, slasher, bass drum, screech notes, and then towards the final fight at the end, there's more of that slow motion with just this sort of, almost like The Shining, when Wendy hits him and he goes down the stairs, that boom, boom, wah, boom, boom, wah. So the music and how it's used is very well done. It's shot beautifully. The editing is really tight, and especially when it comes to building suspense or to create tension or to make things more dramatic, it doesn't come across as cheesy. Also, if you really like different Giallo films like Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, I think you'll really enjoy this. Or if you like amnesia stories, like there's actually another Hitchcock film called Spellbound, which I think I have as part of my House of Hitchcock collection. I could be wrong. But also like Born Identity or Memento. And just seeing how this guy's memory comes back and just sort of finishing that flashback. And the twists are very well done too. So I highly recommend this Giallo. But with that said, I'm going to get to spoilers. So at one point, when George starts threatening both Ted and Sarah, they decide to go to New York to sort of hide out. Also, I haven't even talked about Anita Strindberg, but this is her first kind of major scene. We've seen her before talking to Ted, where she says mutual friend. Like, we have a mutual friend, meaning the person you got to get the drugs for. I'm kind of the voice in between you. She gives him hints like New York. And she's not in it much. But, so when they decide to go to New York, they're out to eat for lunch with the guy friend Reinhardt and Luca. And so then Ted gets brought to the bathroom to have a meeting with George because George asked for Ted. But when Reinhardt is bringing Sarah back to the car, he asks for cigarettes. She says no. He's like, oh, I'll have to go buy some then. And every time Sarah goes to get in the car, he has something to say to like have her check something or think about something. So she has to stand there. And he looks like he's taking his time and like stalling her. Because then a car backs up and hits her. It's Anita Strindberg. Of course, we've already seen her. We know she's involved in this. And so then... So that's when I started thinking, okay, did he hire her to do that? Because we get the idea he's in love with her. In fact, there's even a scene where... Ultimate friend zone moment in a Giallo. He tries to comfort her, so there's this up-close shot of him kind of putting his hand over hers, and then she just kind of like, there, friend. It was almost painful to watch. I was thinking maybe he hired her to do that so she couldn't run off to New York with him. Because for some reason, I didn't think he was going to be involved with the drug stuff, the drug plot. But, so then, now she has this cast, she can't travel, which that's when we get the scene with the matches. So, she has this cast, so she can't get up, and that's what really makes that scene more suspenseful. Luca, who always has a camera, brings over his photo album. And she notices a photo of Reinhardt talking to Anita Strindberg. She asks when he took it. He says right before your accident. She calls Anita Strindberg's insurance company based on the card she gave Reinhardt. They say we have no one under that name. So she starts to suspect more. So then she cuts the cast off. She finds out her leg's not even broken. And the drugs were hidden in there. It's this, yeah, see, there's the dog going. It's this pure heroin strung together like sausages. And this is where it kind of gets confusing because while that's going on, Ted went to go meet George at this abandoned building. They have a fight. That's the cool fight scene. He actually kicks George over a wall off this cliff, gets decapitated. We don't see it up close, but you can see the dummy and then the head floating. Then Ted's knocked out. He's left tied up in the house. And there is this great shot where pretty much the guy behind everything is standing just outside, but there's like these vines covering his face. And saying, you need to recall your plan for how we were going to get the drugs to New York. But he can't. And so then the guy leaves. He says, well, I'll give you a little bit more time. Maybe your memory will come back. So then he starts looking up at the chandelier. And that starts bringing us back to the flashback. He undoes the chandelier with his teeth. And when it falls, he uses the fan blades to cut through the rope on his hands. I don't know if that will work in real life. So back where Sarah is, Reinhardt shows up. And that's when we find out he's the drug guy. It was him the whole time. He's the mutual friend with Anita Strindberg. And what's really confusing is none of them seem to remember anything. Like, there was this concrete plan to take the heroin sausages because find out that Ted and Reinhardt, because also the heroin's worth $1 million. That's also why. At first, we think it's just $1 million, and we find out it's this string of heroin that's worth that. And like the final sort of twist, we see that Ted and Reinhardt were in on this together, and they were gonna plan this trip to New York. But just in case Sarah didn't want to do it, they went ahead and planned out this car accident and put the drugs in the cast. So, which is kind of confusing because that means that guy would know where they were the whole time. But then when Anita Strindberg's name comes up, both Sarah and Reinhardt say, oh, I could not think of her name. I was thinking they were all in the same car accident together and had amnesia to a different level. So prior to the film, Sarah had no knowledge of anything. She kind of figured it out as she went. And then she was willing to help Ted. Still didn't know she was a pawn with the cast and the drugs in the cast and having that accident being set up. And of course, there's a chase through the house where he has the razor blade. She gets the chainsaw in the kitchen. And I mean, the kid's already over there. She gave him the sausages and says, go hide this in one of your toys and come back. It could have showed him going somewhere and maybe placing the chainsaw somewhere for her, anticipating something would happen. I would have accepted that. And another scene was when she squirts the wound alcohol in his face. That's when we get that other slow motion dramatic music clip that I love so much. There's another fight between Ted and Reinhardt where he ends up landing on the chainsaw, and of course it cuts him up, blood goes everywhere. It reminded me of Pieces, just the way it's shot. It had a real grindhouse feel to it. But yeah, I was kind of getting lost during that because I was thinking, like, okay, now if it said they had all gotten the same accident, I would have been, okay, that's a very different, or a very interesting aspect. But then I was thinking, like, he must have had Reinhardt must have had the drugs to put them in the cast. So if he's the guy that's looking for them, unless George was not the one that, like, Reinhardt wasn't the one George had to bring the drugs to. It was someone, George was answering for the guys in New York. In fact, I think that's what it was. I think George was answering for the guys in New York, and Reinhardt was kind of with Ted's side on getting the drugs to them. But after he's cut up with the chainsaw, Luca runs outside, gets a cop. Cop comes in. Sarah tries to tell him, my husband's innocent. Reinhardt came over. We found that he hid his drugs in one of Luca's toys. He tried to kill me. He tried to kill Ted. We'd be dead right now if it wasn't for Ted. But then Ted stands up and says, no, it's actually more than that, with his memory fully restored. Even though right before he says, my memory came back, but is gone for good now. But then he tells the cop, there's more to it than that. We better have a long discussion. And then the movie ends with her kind of crying, kind of shaking her head no, like, don't go or don't do it. I also love the music where there's actual singing. It's in I think Italian, probably, obviously Italian. But the music is one of the best aspects of this, but I'll say the writing is very solid. And choosing to do a Giallo where it's still a mystery, but it's more about, I said in my Forbidden Photos review, it's very different or kind of ballsy to drift that far away from such a simple formula, but to pull it off that well. I think I actually like Puzzle more than Forbidden Photos. But, I thought all the acting, even Luca, because he was annoying, even though he was supposed to be. The twist really got me. Like I said, I had my suspicions about Reinhardt, but I thought he was in it more for his own personal jealousy reasons. I didn't think he was actually involved with the drugs. So yeah, they were gonna fake this accident so that she could have a cast, get the drugs in it, then all go to New York together. And right before the fight breaks out, since Ted has his memory back, he acts like he has his memory back. And being like, Sarah, I'm sorry, we're gonna keep it a secret. Then he looks at Reinhardt and is like, okay, now we can all put the cast back on, put the drugs back in, we can all go back to New York together. To kind of get Reinhardt's guard down, and then they fight. Not sleazy at all, which it doesn't need to be. I mean, it's got a lot else going for it. Again, the writing and the editing, cinematography, music, characters, and performances. The dog is killed off screen. We see George get kicked over the wall. We see Reinhardt get cut up with the chainsaw. And then we just get that repeated flashback of the guy getting his throat slit. But it's a very intriguing film. You definitely want to see what hints will trigger him next and what more it will reveal the next time. Just a very solid Giallo. I'm glad I checked it out. And I thought this is actually number 42. I was going to say that this is my 40th Giallo review on the playlist, but I'm already ahead of 40 because I forgot to put Argento's Phenomena in that playlist. But this is my 80th Italian review in general, so that's coming up to be one of the second biggest playlist on my channel. There's 80 slashers and then Italian films. But by the time this marathon's over, it will exceed the slasher playlist, and the Giallo playlist will probably be at 80 something. So, yeah, if you're enjoying this marathon, you can go over to my Italian playlist, which now has 80 reviews. Or if you want just Giallos, there's a separate playlist with just those. And that's at number 42 now, I think. So, definitely doing a lot more in this marathon than the first one. But that's 1974's Puzzle. Very different from the general formula, but it does a lot with it, and it's very interesting, very intriguing, and almost every aspect about it is great. Music, acting, editing, very tight, solid film. But anyway, stay tuned for more Italian horror and Giallo films. Thank you for watching.